Welcome, everyone, to the Sports Writers Podcast. I'm Bill Newell, along with Phil Stacey, the executive sports editor of the Salem News and Beyond, Matt Williams, Salem News assistant sports editor, and Nick Giannino in my top left of my screen to block from the Gloucester Times, their sports editor here on the Sports Writers Podcast this week. As we discuss sports on a Monday afternoon here with the warmer weather coming here, but Nick Giannino, let's start with we've rolled the dice, if we will, here, and we're going to go with girls lacrosse. It's timely, so let's go with that.
Yeah. Well, we had a nice Sunday morning game over at Hamilton yesterday. Caught Hamilton Wenham playing Manchester Essex girls, and as we know, Manchester is one of the better teams in Division 4 in the state. Made it all the way to the semifinals last year before losing to Ipswich, and they're rolling again this year. They're 7-1 now. Their only loss came to Ipswich earlier in the year, and that was a 6-4 game. We've talked a little bit about that. They're going to get that rematch coming up later this week in Ipswich, a 7:30 game under the lights. Right? Do they have lights over there? I'm just thinking that. No, so it's in Manchester. I'm sorry. Under the lights later this week. But yeah, man, the Hornets got a big win over Hamilton Wenham, who I was pretty impressed with. The Generals are sitting right around 500 right now, but they got some firepower, and they kept pace with Manchester for much of the game. Obviously we've talked about Evie Bernard. I think she had 38 goals already coming into yesterday in 7 games, and they held her to 2 goals. So that was kind of the key, face guarding her, double teaming her, shutting her down, trying to make things difficult for her on offense. And Manchester was able to do that for the first half. They built a 10-3 lead and held on for a 13-7 win in the second half. So Hamilton Wenham came back a little bit. They held Manchester only 3 goals in those final 2 quarters. But I thought it was a good team performance. Manchester is pretty balanced. I don't want to say they don't have a superstar, because Mekhi O'Neill has been playing some really good lacrosse. She's a terrific player. And then their goalie, Bridget Caravellano, made some incredible saves yesterday. She's headed to University of North Carolina when she graduates, only a junior right now, but already committed. And she stopped a ton of those 8-meter free position shots yesterday, which was huge. And Mekhi did her thing, but it was Sylvie McCavanagh for the Hornets that really broke out. She had 7 goals in the win, and she's a girl that's been scoring a couple goals here, a couple goals there. She does a little bit of everything, but I think they were keying in on O'Neill a lot, and she was able to find some open space and get 7 goals. So big win for the Hornets. Like I said, they're 7-1, right near the top of the rankings in Division 4, and going to have a big rematch. They got a big week overall. They got Pentucket tomorrow on the road, and then they come back home to face Ipswich and hopefully get a win there. The Tigers have been a little bit of a thorn in their side in recent years. I think 4 straight losses by 2 goals every time for Manchester. So they're right there. But Alison Tivnan and her Ipswich group are talented as well, and obviously made it all the way to the state championship last year. So that'll be a fun one. It's good to have some really strong competition in the Cal. I think a lot of those teams are some of the better teams in the state. So the girls lacrosse has been good so far. I mean, I could touch on other teams. That's a lot of info on one team, but they're looking pretty good.
I say touch on a few more teams. Let's do this. Let's do this right here. Come on.
Yeah, well, we talked about Beverly and Peabody. Those are probably the 2 top teams in the NEC right now. Masco is still competitive, but they're having a little bit of a down year as they change the guard with the coaches there. Jalen Aho taking over. They're still, floating above water for sure, but it's really Peabody and Beverly that have kind of taken the reins this year. Both have some really talented scorers. We've talked about Beverly with Lily Shea and Lauren Cayley and Jocelyn Silva. Those 3 have really done the bulk of the scoring for them, and 2 of them, Silva and Shea, have a chance to both go for 100 points this year. I think when I did the stats last week, they were both closing in on 50 points, and they're a little bit over the halfway point in the season. So they're right there. They're going to have their crack at maybe hitting 100 points. They're both in the 40s for goals now. I'd have to double check the leaders, but they're right at the top. So Beverly's got a really potent attack, and then Peabody, same thing. Brooke Lamazny, we've talked about her. She's setting all sorts of records there. She already broke the career point record at Peabody, and she's still got another year after this. So she's well on her way to setting a pretty significant points record there for the Tanners. And but talking to Michelle Roach, the coach of Peabody, she's been more impressed about her defense. I'm hoping to highlight them in the column coming up this Friday, but their defense has been terrific. Their goalie, Caitlin Snow, has been really good, and they're holding teams to, single-digit goals, which has been, huge for their success. So just like Manchester allowed 7 goals on Sunday, like I said, to Hamilton Wenham, and that was the most goals they allowed all year. Still won by 6 goals, but they hadn't allowed more than 6 until that one. So defense has been big, and those are probably 2 other teams to watch. And then Pingree, I talked about Pingree in my column this past week. They're 8-2-1, I believe, kind of pretty much dominating their league competition. I think they got a really good shot to win the EIL. Their season's super quick, really condensed, even more so than the MIAA teams. I feel, they're going to be done. I guess about the same time, the end of this month, 22nd, I think, is their last game, and then they have their EIL tournament. But they got a strong team too, so it's nice to see Pingree doing some damage, and hopefully they can get a chance to compete in the NEPSAC tournament. They don't have a NEPSAC Class B tournament for girls lacrosse for whatever reason, and Pingree's in the B class, so they kind of get screwed out of that, but they're hoping to maybe slide into the NEPSAC Class C or the D tournament. They're hoping to get some sort of waiver to be able to do that. I'm sure there's a lot of teams in the same boat that want to compete and can't because there's no Class B. So, we'll see how they do in the EIL, and then maybe they can get a bid in the C or the D. But 8-2-1 for them, pretty good.
Good stuff. As I'm thinking, Phil, maybe it'd be useful if you could share with our listeners how you guys handle your columns this year, because there are things that people really do look forward to. The features on girls lacrosse, boys lacrosse, softball, baseball, and so on, where you zero in and you pull the notebook out, as we say as you would say in the sports writing business.
Yeah, so we usually have designated days that we run those columns in both the Salem News and the Gloucester Times. Now that for those of you who don't know, I would assume most people listening to the podcast know, but in case you don't, Nick worked with us in Salem for what, Nick, 5 or 6 years?
Yeah, about 6 years.
6 years. And was transferred to Gloucester right around New Year's. So there's 3 of us now, Nick in Gloucester and Willie and I here in Salem. And we kind of all share responsibilities with these in-season columns. So for the spring, we kind of rotate, the 3 of us rotate writing a softball column on North Shore softball every Monday. Today was my turn to write. So we had several notes, but the lead, the top piece in the notebook was, in the column, I should say, was about Mark Valou, the legendary Endicott coach, won over 600 games there, multiple NCAA tournaments, conference titles, one of the best to ever do it. And he is back in his hometown of Danvers for the first time in more than 30 years, when he was an assistant coach for Otto Moulton on some of those great 90s Danvers teams. So he's back now as the head coach, and they're experiencing success. It's a young team, but there's a lot of good pieces there, and they're doing well there. So that's the Monday column. On Wednesdays, it's our staple. It's the Matt Williams Around the Horn baseball column. Matt's been doing that for 16 years now, Willie? A long time.
Yeah, getting old.
Is it 16 years been doing that?
I took it over full time for the 2009 season. We split the 2008 season. You and I did half and half, and the following year you decided to bestow it upon me and float and have sort of a spring that was more duties. How times have changed since then. My goodness gracious.
Yeah.
15 years lot of reductions in the staffing. God, if we had that luxury these days, you know.
The
But
halcyon days.
yeah, so
Yeah.
2009 for full time. So that was,
Yeah,
you
16
know,
years ago.
yeah, and I mean, I don't know, before that, you know, you started it in what, 05, 04, something like that. Did you alternate with the Kipper, or were you doing it full time before I came in? I'm not even sure.
No, I think I was doing it for a while. I might have even started before then, like 2001, 2002, somewhere in there. Um, I honestly can't remember, but yeah, it's been going for a while. That's been our Wednesday staple for, let's call it 2 decades now. And
Quarter century, I guess.
yeah, I mean, there's nobody better than Matt around at the local baseball knowledge, Bill. I mean, he just has his pulse on the finger of every team, all the coaches, what's happening, the lineup changes, pitching rotations, who's hot, who's dipping, that kind of thing. He really does a great job there. So that'll appear in both newspapers on Wednesday. On Thursday, it's the boys lacrosse, which I do. Took that over when Matt Jenkins left the newspaper about 8 years ago now, I want to say, maybe 9.
And I would say nobody knows the Fogos and the Wings better than Phil. So, you know, that's reciprocated tenfold. You know, I think the lacrosse people have never had better coverage. You know, I know Matt was like the man of the year one time, but I don't know if he knew the Fogos like Phil does.
That's not for me to say. Matt was excellent at it. I just do my thing and I enjoy it. And on Fridays, of course, Nick has made the girls lacrosse beat his own. He is a wizard at all things draw control and free position hits and whatnot. So I would like to think that our readers, in both in the Salem News and now that we've been doing it in the Gloucester Times for the last year or so, benefit from getting a real, booyah base of sports knowledge throughout, not only throughout the week, but they get a taste of what everyone in the league is doing. We try to touch on everybody. We obviously can't do everybody every week, but we try to get out to as much as we can and cover as much as we can and get the stories out there that are worth telling to the people. So we try to spread it out along with, Nick is also excellent reporter in tennis. So Nick gets out to a lot of big tennis matches and we stay on top of things there. And of course, Willie has always been a strong proponent of our friends in the track and field committee, track and field world, I should say, committee. I don't know where that came from.
Community, maybe.
Communities. You're probably going for
Community, yeah. What did I say? Committee? It's a Monday. Sorry.
They got a lot of committees too, I'm sure. So
yeah. So hey, we may be spread thin, but we try to do the most that we can with what we have. And I'd like to say, without patting ourselves in the back, that I think we do a pretty damn good job at.
And I will say, Bill, sometimes the columns might look a little bit different in each paper, depending on space. I usually get the 2 pages in the Gloucester Times, and obviously the main focus point there is the Cape Ann schools with Rockport, Gloucester, and Manchester Essex. We try to incorporate something on at least one of those teams in every column each week, whether it be the lead or, extra notes in the column. We want to get those schools in there, obviously, as well. So, but the columns may look a little different in each paper. So if you read it in the Gloucester Times, and you're looking for a note on one of your teams from the North Shore area, jump over to the Salem News. It's more than likely in there. And we'll continue to do these columns throughout the rest of the spring up until the playoffs. So, yeah, it's been good.
Even I picked up on that piece as much as so many things go over my head. I did pick up on that piece as to how you guys do tweak those columns a little bit from paper to paper for your audience. And Phil, I got to give you kudos here. We can use the word kudos in this podcast, but for dropping a name like Otto Moulton into the podcast here from years ago. He was a frequent guest with me on WESX years ago with softball and stuff from Danvers. So I love hearing that name. And of course, the Valoo name in softball in Danvers is just huge. So great column.
I think Mark I'd like to think, at least it seemed that way to me. I'm surprised or impressed or whatnot was the word. But when we were talking, and I remembered that his daughter, Amy, was a star on that 1991 team that was undefeated all the way until the state final before they lost to Oakmont. and that Amy Papamichael was a slugging first baseman. In fact, I believe she hit the ball out of Innocenti Park in Beverly, which is where I played men's league softball for years and years. And I was pretty impressed that like an 18-year-old high school girl could put one out of there. That was a pretty good poke there. And she was right-handed. I mean, there's a short portion right there, but she was right-handed, so she smacked that thing. And I think I remember it well because it was my first spring on the job that I started in the fall of '90. So I remember that team well because I did a few games that spring and all, and I might have even gone to the state final. I can't remember that, but I think he was like, "Oh man, you remember that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do actually." So it's funny how time comes a full circle like that. He was a coach and a dad on that team, and now he's a coach again, and his granddaughter's on the team. So that's pretty cool.
All right, Phil, let's just stick with lacrosse here. Breaking news from the past few days, St. John's Prep lost a lacrosse game. So put that into context for us.
Yeah, they didn't just lose. They got hammered. They lost 8-3 to the Wreckers, which I think is a great high school nickname, the Wreckers of Staples, Connecticut. Now, Staples, two-time Connecticut state champions. I am not intelligent enough or informed enough to tell you whether St. John's, Massachusetts high school lacrosse is any better or worse than Connecticut high school lacrosse. I would think that the better teams in Connecticut are really good because they kind of they remind me of that pocket that you hear about in like New York and Maryland, those like Eastern Seaboard Connecticut state powers. And yes, it counts on the St. John's Prep record. There's no more of these, endowment games or anything like that. But big picture for Massachusetts, I don't think it means a whole lot. I mean, I think they're still the top team in the state. I think they're going to learn because of this game. I think, he might not say this publicly, but I think secretly, John Pinchon, the St. John's head coach, and his staff maybe like it because now they can say, well, yeah, you think you guys are great, but we just got our hats handed to us on the road, and there are, 9 reasons why, and we're going to go over every one of these, and we're going to make sure it doesn't happen again. So, not the worst thing in the world. I mean, hey, sure, who doesn't want to go undefeated, right? That's cool if you do. I mean, if you're Hamilton Wenham Tennis is a team I can think of that's still undefeated, and they could very well go the entire year without losing. Who else, guys, is undefeated that could go all the way now? I mean, do we have anybody else actually? I think of it that's undefeated.
both tennis, right?
St. John's Prep boys tennis is undefeated.
That's
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
boys.
Okay. Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
really good.
Under Coach Metropolis. That's right. And the boys too, Nick?
I think the boys and the girls, Hamilton Wenham, are both still undefeated. Yeah.
Wow.
There
Okay.
you go.
Is there anyone
Yeah.
that plays on a diamond or plays
No,
with a
no
stick that's undefeated?
Not that I can think of.
No. And I think like it just kind of, I always say this to people, like it reminds you that there's levels to this stuff, right? Like I always think of the old Larry Bird saying, it's like, there's always somebody out there that's shooting more than you. You may think you're the hot stuff, but there's always somebody out there that's pretty good. I'm sure there's some tennis team in Florida that's, got 3 kids going Ole Miss that would make mincemeat out of some of these teams up here. So it's just, there's levels. There's levels.
And I
That's
peeked
good.
here. Hamilton Wenham boys did lose one match, 2-3 to Linfield, so they got one loss.
Okay. Well, the point is that an in-season loss, even for the best of teams, and I think it's safe to say, as 3-time defending state champions, St. John's is among the best teams in the state again. But a loss isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. I know, for instance, if you're comparing apples to apples here, St. John's Prep Hockey, which won the state title, had back-to-back in-season losses after winning 12 games in a row. And in hindsight, that was the best thing that ever could have happened to them because they refocused, they made the changes they needed to make, they tweaked the lines, and they go on and run the rest of the way and they win the state title. So, does this prep team have that drive? Lacrosse I'm talking about, can they respond and bounce back from a loss such as this? Can their leadership step up and pull their teammates along with them? Can other guys step up and assume the responsibility that's placed ahead of them? Those are all questions that have to be asked and then answered if they want to be winning another title. It's by no means a given. This loss shows that they're fallible, but I do think, knowing the recent history of the program, knowing the coaching staff very well, and knowing the players on the team, they should be able to bounce back from this. Now, they're playing plenty of other good teams this year. They got Lincoln Sudbury coming up Tuesday. They have Hingham at the end of the year. They're going to be tested at some point in the state tournament. Not in the early rounds, but they will at some point. So, will this loss down in Staples ultimately propel them to another championship, or show that there are chinks in the armor that need to be fixed? And if they're not, they're in trouble. Time will tell.
Phil, I gotta
Hingham's in
jump
Division
in,
Two
Phil,
now.
and just say that
Can you
Staples.
use that expression, by the way? I just realized that. Can I say it?
What's that?
Can I still use that expression? Like
What?
in the armor?
Oh, sure, you can. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I just
What I wanted to add, Willie, and I'm sorry to interrupt you here, but
No.
that Staples, Connecticut, in their 8-3 win over the Prep must have just hit their easy button. The Staples easy button.
I
Staples
see what you
office
did.
supplies.
I
You
like
guys
it.
remember that?
I
The
like it.
There you go. So maybe Coach Pinchon over there at the Prep grabbed his own easy button for the rest of the rest of the regular season here. Can just punch that easy button, and there you go.
Well, what I love about Coach Pinchon is he tells it like it is. There's no sugarcoating it. Oh, we had a long bus ride, or oh, we didn't have much time to stretch. No, he's like, we got totally outplayed, outclassed. We have a lot to work on. Like, it's why sugarcoat it? You tell it like it is. Not everything is sunshine.
And he says, and we didn't have the easy button like they have. They've got the easy button. We don't have that. This is what we're up against.
Let me just touch on a few other things here, because I know we talked a lot about St. John's when you asked me about lacrosse. I wrote about Swampscott last week. They're on a roll. They're 10-1. They're playing great. Jeff Beckett's got his team really firing on all cylinders.
Former Pentucket coach during my time.
Former Pentucket coach. That's right. That's right. They got a lot of balanced scoring on that team. They got freshmen helping out with Chase Russo, John Bombarda. They've got great defense in front of the goalie, Timmy Sheehan. And their schedule, the rest of the regular season looks as if it should be advantageous for them. They're only playing one team with a winning record between now and the end of the regular season. I believe it is Pentucket, Nick, to be honest with you.
There you go.
That one team. So, it'll be exciting to see what they can do in the state tournament, Division III. They're not a traditional, Cohasset or a team like that. That's a Division III power. But, they could make some noise, depending on where they're slotted and what kind of draw they get and whatnot. I see Masconomet getting better. They're 5-5. They've been a little up and down. I've seen them a couple of times. They have talent. They just need to put it together. I think when they're working their best, at least from what I've seen, it's smart ball movement, communication on passing, really being aggressive on ground balls and attacking the net. If they can continue to do that, we should see them improve upon their 5-5. Going to a game later this afternoon, Beverly and Swampscott. Haven't seen Salem yet. I'm sorry, Beverly and Swampscott. I'm like full of mistakes today. I don't know what it is. Beverly and Salem, over at the turf at Frank 40 Field in Beverly. Haven't seen Salem yet. Young and improving team. We touched on them a little while ago when we talked about Mikey Curtin and what he can do scoring wise. AJ Alessi is another guy. Bernal, Andreas Bernal, Vincent Milano and net. But they're going to be up against the Beverly team that's had a week off, coming off a 1-goal loss against Marblehead after having won 4 in a row. They're going to be hungry. So a lot to prove for both teams there. And I am looking forward to going out to seeing Ipswich for the first time later this week. They are 8-1. They got a big game tomorrow, Tuesday, which I actually can't go to. I plan to, but I can't, against Newburyport. But they're going to be playing Manchester Essex, Nick's Manchester Essex Hornets on Thursday. So looking forward to seeing the Tigers. They are 8-1 heading into tomorrow against the Clippers. So when I see them Thursday, they'll either be 9-1 and 8 or 8-2, obviously.
And they had a close one with Manchester last time, so
yeah,
it should be a good game. Manchester's 6-3 right now. They're coming off a 1-goal loss to Weston, who I don't know too much about, but they always have pretty good lacrosse over there.
Yeah,
so,
they do. Yeah.
They're having a solid season as well. I think that'll be another big test for them.
I agree.
All right, I'm looking at the clock here, and Willie, maybe you can help us out here. And maybe I know we spent a bunch of time on softball last week, as we should have, with Beverly's huge win over Peabody a week ago, and about that team and those teams, two teams. But Matt, maybe a note or two from baseball. Anything on softball you want to share with us? And then I think we could spend a few moments at the end on the Celtics and Bruins. So take us away, Matt.
I think baseball wise, Hamilton Wenham is the team that's interesting me at the moment. I mean, they've won 4 in a row without Gian Gamelli, who's their best pitcher and probably their best hitter too. So they lost him early in the year. They're hoping to get him back to hit and maybe pitch in the state tournament and hit before that, hit within the next week or two here. So they stumbled. They were 1-3, 2-4, and you figure, Cape Ann League school, Division IV school, you lose one guy, it's a big domino effect there. And they've put together 4 straight wins to get to 6-4. A great comeback win over a pretty good Manchester Essex team, and then beat Danvers on Sunday. So back-to-back days, they beat 2 pretty good teams. So
and that comeback, Willie, not to interrupt, but Hornets were up 6-4 going into the 7th in that one, and Hamilton hung 5 runs in the 7th to win it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, you could pencil them in for the state tournament now with already 6 wins, and the schedule they play in D4. They're going to be moving up the rankings, and if they can get Gamelli back, he's very involved in the team right now. He's calling pitches, on the radio and helping his pitching staff kind of learn, how to throw and things like that. So I think that's a team that's a little bit under the radar that's doing pretty well. I would also look at Peabody. The Tanners are 10-2 and they've won 7 in a row, which that's actually their longest win streak now in 7 years. Which is you used to think like ho hum Peabody baseball's in the state tournament, no big deal. They've won 6, 7, 8 games in a row. Yeah, they're going to lose and then rattle off 6, 7, 8 more, but they've kind of been on some hard times the last few years. And so to rebound and build back towards this season, I don't think very many people would have predicted that they'd be 10-2 at this stage of the season. So it's remarkable. They're getting some incredible pitching from their senior captain, Cam Connolly, the left-hander. He's got close to 50 strikeouts. And they've got a freshman, Dylan Cunningham, a traditional right-hander. He's got upwards of 40 strikeouts now through a complete game shutout against Swampscott, his first shutout of his career. Now, his first start of his career was against Swampscott in the second week of the season. He didn't get out of the 3rd inning. He walked 5 guys. He was a little bit wild. So the difference between him in that first start, fast forward 4 weeks, and in that first shutout, that makes Peabody a real contender. They're in first place in the NEC Lynch right now. They haven't won a league title in 8 years, which again for them is pretty remarkable. I mean, they won 10 consecutive league titles at one point, and now they're in a little bit of a drought. So for them to be sitting here, let's see, they are 3-0 in NEC crossover games, which is a big difference from last year. I think they either went 1-5 or 1-6 in the crossover games, and even worse because they were playing a lot of those teams twice. So they've really turned it around, and it's a credit to them. And I guess Coach Betts can still coach. After they won 6 games last year, people were kind of wondering, but I guess
you totally didn't. I remember talking to you preseason, and you totally didn't see this at all.
No, and credit to Coach Betts. He changed the schedule a little bit. They're only playing those teams once instead of twice, and I think that's helped them add some confidence. I mean, I thought they would contend there in the Lynch, but I know Swampscott's got a real good ball club, and so does Salem. I mean, I figured they would be in the state tournament, but I certainly did not think they'd be 10-2, chasing 15, 16 wins. I figured they'd be an 11, 12 win team, and they're blowing that out of the water. So full marks to those guys. And I got to shout out Josh Sigmund, the catcher. They've gotten tremendously improved play at the catcher position, and that's been the biggest difference. Last year, they played some shoddy defense at times. They gave up a lot of stolen bases. They got 10-run ruled a lot. And the biggest difference is Cunningham and Connolly, the strikeouts and the catcher playing that much better. And our old friend Nick Kukuru used to quote the Gloucester coach Rory Gentile all the time. He says, if you can strike out 10 guys a game, you're going to win a lot of games because, there's just less opportunities for errors to be made. And I think Peabody's really reaping the rewards of that with all the strikeouts Cunningham and Connolly are getting. There's just so many fewer opportunities to make mistakes in the field. When you're lining up those punch outs, you're going to be in good shape.
Are you surprised, Willie, that Beverly has been struggling lately?
A little bit. I had a mutual friend ask me recently, when was the last time, if ever, that Beverly and Danvers baseball missed the state tournament in the same year? Right. And I mean, that's something that could happen. I mean, the Panthers are 4-8 and the Falcons are 3-7. I don't think either of those teams is a 4, 5, 6 win ball club. They've had some tough luck. I mean, you look at
you might have to go back to like the late 80s for that.
I honestly, I have not looked it up completely. I do not believe it's happened in the era in which you can make the state tournament by being 500. In other words, I think you have to go back to when the qualifying standard was what, 660 or 600 or something like that.
Yeah, you had to go like 12-6 basically.
It was 79%, wasn't it? Isn't that what it came out?
70%. Okay, yeah. So I mean, I think you got to go all the way back to that. In the case of Beverly, I mean, they lose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They lose 6 games in a row, right? And you look, one of those games was the suspended game against Gloucester, where they have bases loaded in the 11th inning. They can't get a run home. And Gloucester ends up batting around in the 14th and beating them 17-6, right? Later that day, they lose to Gloucester 10-9. They blow a big lead. And then a couple days later, they lose to Swampscott by a run, 5-4. So I mean, you win those 3 games, or you win 2 of those games, and now all of a sudden you're not thinking about a big losing streak, right? You've lost 6 games in a row, and what do you do next? Graham Gavin and Connor Connolly combined to no-hit first place Masconomet. So I think the fact that you're sitting here at 2-8 and you get a no-hitter just shows you that Beverly's much better than their record, right?
That's what I couldn't figure out.
That they've had some tough puck luck. They really have. And, they also lost a 1-run game to Marblehead. So, I mean, that's 4 one-possession games, so to speak, that they've lost. And that's, you just hope by the end of the season that those one-possession games even themselves out. Usually you win your share, you lose your share. Baseball can be a streaky game, but obviously when you got to win 10 games, dropping 6 in a row is really going to hurt your chances. I mean, they've put a lot of pressure on themselves here. They're 4-8, and they're going to have to go 6-2 or better in their last 8 games. And there's not a lot of gimmies there. They're playing Lawrence, they're playing Arlington, Salem, Marblehead, Peabody, and Danvers. I mean, that's, they're going to have to play really, really well. I'm not saying they can't do it because they're a good ball club, but there's not a lot of games on that slate where you can point at it and say, okay, that's a win. We can put that in the bank. No, we're going to have to show up and earn it every day, which, hey, I know that's how Coach Cahill wants it anyway, that he doesn't want to take anything for granted, but it's definitely a tall task.
Well, I mean, today there's 3 weeks until the end. I think the Memorial Day is the last day that you can officially play a regular season game. So let's call it 3 weeks here. To go 6-2 during that time is going to be asking a lot against the slate that they're up against. But I think there are several teams that are going to have to make a push like that across the spectrum of sports.
Yep, absolutely. Danvers too. Danvers baseball's sitting here, and they got a good club. You look, you think, you got a horse to ride in Mike Maroney, so you're gonna have to ask him to win a lot of games.
Well, does St. John's Prep get in just based on their schedule, or are they in? Are they in a spot where they could miss the postseason?
Well, so they're in Division 3, which you would think that the schedule would play.
St. John's Prep?
I'm talking about Danvers.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, the Prep's going to get in. I mean,
that's what I figured.
If the basketball
they would hit back-to-back games, and they would shut out 3 games in a row and all, but they're still going to get it.
Oh yeah, I mean they beat Lawrence they were 24th, and I think Lawrence was like 14th, and they beat them. I mean, for crying out loud, if the basketball team can get in with 6 wins, the baseball team's gonna get in with 8 or 9. And
Okay.
that's if they don't even get to 10. I
Okay.
would assume they would get to 10. Now Danvers is an interesting case because they are 45th in Division 3. Now I would imagine that Danvers plays a pretty respectable schedule. They're not playing a lot of cupcakes, so I would think. I mean, if they win 8 games, I would think they might have a decent chance to climb into that top 32. If they
Really?
go 9 and 11, they might squeeze in. But they definitely can't. They're not going to get in if they win 5 or 6. So somewhere between 7 and 9, we're going to have to see how these power rankings move. To be honest, I'm a little bit surprised that they're as low as they are, even at 3 and 6.
You know, Matt, you mentioned one possession game in baseball. Maybe make it a one swing game. You know what I mean? Like a one swing game. You know, a
That's
game
good.
can turn on one swing. There you go.
And
We're
I would
running
just
low
real
on
quick,
time.
before
and-
we head to the Bruins, I would just like to shout out the NEC softball. Their power rankings are excellent across the board. It's really kind of the opposite of some of our other sports. Danvers is very high, Marblehead's very high. Obviously, we talk about Peabody all the time. Beverly's moving up the charts, so that's cool to see. Good job.
Nice. And since we'll skip the Celtics because all three of you guys are so well versed on the Bruins, we'll go that way.
I mean,
Let
I
me
know
just
the
say-
Cleveland Cavaliers inside and out, man.
yeah, Phil,
They still have
you're going to be the only.
Ilgauskas.
What's that? We
No,
only
they
have
still
have
we have a minute.
Ilgauskas?
They got Tristan Thompson though.
Okay.
I think Matt and I have differing views on this second series, although he's starting to convince me a little bit. I don't think it's a good matchup for the Bruins. I think Florida's really heavy. I think they have a better forward core. I think they have a better defensive core. The Bruins have an edge in goaltending, Swayman over Bobrovsky, but they're coming off of a tough 7-game series, overtime in Game 7. Florida's rested. I could see Florida winning in 5. Willie, tell me I'm wrong.
Well, I don't like Florida that much. I think Florida's got a good team, but I don't think they're significantly better than the Bruins. So I look at it as, hey, it's a coin toss. It came up heads for Florida last year, so it'll come up tails for the Bruins this year. I think it's that evenly matched. I think the way Swayman is playing is something to be aware of. If you're a hockey fan, you've seen this many times. When a guy's that locked in, sometimes it can carry you. I've been trying to think, Phil, when was the last time the Bruins played the same team in back-to-back playoff years?
You get cut off here.
Yeah,
Was it Tampa?
we're gonna get cut, but
Well,
gentlemen,
and they got the spaghetti guy